to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first thing we'll have is the clerk will read the roll call.
Dale Ames,
Present.
Jason Alders,
Here.
Kristen Moan. Here. Harold Jorgensen,
Present.
Kelly Piro. Here. Robert Schiller,
Yep.
Barry Wagner, Paul Reichert.
Here.
Mary Rainville. Present. Randy Bettinger. Dan Bryan.
Here.
Jeff Pilon.
Present.
Liz Stockman. Here.
Okay, the next thing we'll have the clerk read the meeting policy.
The agenda as printed or amended will be followed, so all necessary and needed actions by the Planning and Zoning Commission will be addressed. The agenda can be amended by proper motion. Business from the floor is welcome and allotted on our agenda. When comments from the floor are made, you must first be recognized by the chairman. Second, state your name and address for the record. And third, you will have no more than 3 minutes to state your comments or concerns. Copy of the agenda and quite a few extra packets are available on the back table. There's a sign-in sheet and a sign-up sheet for floor items. Please turn off all cell phones.
Okay, the next thing we're going to do is approve or amend tonight's meeting agenda of November 27th, 2018. Do we have a motion to approve this?
I'll make one motion.
Commissioner Pearl made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Commissioner
Alders.
seconded. All in favor? Or just any discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next thing on the agenda, we're going to approve or amend the planning and zoning meetings of October 23rd, 2018. Do we have a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Commissioner Moore made the motion to approve. Did we make a second to this?
I'll second it.
Okay. Commissioner Alders seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any floor items?
Helen. Very good. No.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, seeing that there's no floor items, the first thing on the agenda is a minor subdivision, a request by Matt Ward for property owned at 6635 Old Viking Boulevard to split 58.56 acres into 3 residential lots. Mr. Ward has proposed an alternate layout from the review at the October 23rd, 2018 regular meeting. At this time, is the planner got something to say about this at this time?
Yes, sir, I'll just say a few words. So, as you said, Mr. Chair, it's a 58.56 acre property. The planning and zoning recommended approval of a 3-acre lot split at their October meeting. Mr. Ward has since come through with a revised survey, and that has to come back to you for another recommendation. So on the left, shown with the blue lines, is the plan you approved a month ago for 3 parcels. Parcels A is the largest parcel where Mr. Ward wishes to build a home. Parcels B and C are each 10 acres to be sold. Previously, there was a 66-foot swath for a future street. He has since eliminated that, and so that the lot lines of parcels B and C run more north-south, are more in alignment with each other. and don't jut into parcel A quite as much. So what's happening now is that parcel A in the future, if it were ever subdivided, could attain access from Old Viking Boulevard. The city engineer and I have both reviewed this and recommend approval of the present layout. There is a revised findings of fact in your packet, very similar to the one that you approved last month.
Okay. Is the applicant here, Mr. Ward?
No, he could not be here this evening.
Okay. Has the planning and zoning got any questions about this? Basically, it looks like only one thing has been removed, the driveway up between those two lots there.
Correct. It doesn't look, and there's nothing in our ordinance that says he needs to have that there, so.
Correct. Yeah, he could get future street access off of Old Viking this way. Previously, see, he didn't have enough room with the wetlands in the way there, so, but now he's allowed for that opportunity at a later date.
Okay, is there any other questions that we have here about it? If not, somebody'd like to make a motion to this and include in the motions what the recommendations are also?
I'll make a motion to approve Matt Ward's revised lot split from the old revision to the new revision, eliminating the street.
With the addition. Okay, the recommendations. Okay, Commissioner Alders, he made the motion. Does somebody second this motion?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Schiller. Seconded. Are there any questions or anybody wants to do anything about this? Additions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I think we should have one more motion that we did not take care of before, is having to do with the December meeting. We did not make a motion not to have this, so I move that we not have our December meeting. There's nothing on the agenda at this time, so somebody like to second this motion?
I'll second my motion.
Okay, Commissioner Perro seconded. Any discussion? Seeing there's no discussion, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we'll need one more motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Commissioner Moore made a motion to adjourn. Someone like to second this motion?
I'll second it.
In favor, say aye. Aye. I will turn it over to the mayor.
All right, and I'll call to order the joint meeting of the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission to discuss our 2040 comprehensive land use draft. Planner Stockman, if you'd like to walk us through your presentation.
Thank you. So the goal tonight is to move our land use plan, our 2040 land use plan ahead in making some decisions for this comp plan update that we need to have done by July 1st or thereabouts. So the first graphic is showing the 2030 land use plan approved approximately 10 years ago. And this shows the diversified rural designation that will be removed from the 2040 land use plan, which was also designated as a future MUSA area, meaning future urban service area. So that will be removed from our plan. The 2040 land use and proposed zoning shows, again, the yellow area, which was previously limited to, or really currently is limited to 1 unit per 10 acres of development. And that was put in place under Met Council's direction to reserve larger pockets of land for future urban services. We no longer need to have that area as part of our 2040 plan, so that interim rural residential zoning and that density will go away. The proposed zoning changes and land use changes that we're talking about at this time, first and foremost would be in the detachment annexation area, approximately a 500-acre area in the southeast corner of the city. Would be to create a new zoning district for that area to accommodate the 2-acre lot size with a 2-acre average overall density. So that's the yellow that you're seeing here in the southeast area. There's a small pocket of yellow up along Viking. And where the yellow overlaps some of the commercial that we agreed to eliminate, that's where you're seeing the orange or the gold color up along 22 there. I'll have an enlarged graphic in a moment. The second thing I'd like to address this evening would be the expansion of these commercial industrial areas over near our existing business park. As you know, we are nearly at capacity out there, and it would be nice to be able to accommodate new businesses in now then. So we had previously talked about this briefly, our desire to go toward the west on both sides of 22. So there's still outstanding questions about this east end of the commercial area, as well as this little pocket down here along 181st Avenue. This graphic is showing an enlarged picture of the detachment annexation area where we agreed to the 2-acre lot sizes. So the ROS, the Residential Open Space District, is what I'm proposing to call it. It doesn't have to be named that, but since the city would like it to incorporate parks, trails, and open spaces, it seemed to be a reasonable start anyway. So you'll see this dashed red line here. This is the border of what was previously commercial. So we've removed about 124 acres of commercial land in this vicinity and then up in here. We reserved 5 acres at this corner and about 50 acres, I believe, up around this southeast corner of 22 and 47. So we have this area butting up to some of our 1-acre lots along Rogers Lake, which is very appropriate. We're abutting the city of Oak Grove's 2.5-acre lot sizes. And so a couple things we need to discuss are a couple pockets in here in this vicinity that aren't owned by Mr. Raisler. And if left, I guess, if left the way they are, we'd have a little pocket of commercial in here of about 15 acres. And this is a 5-acre piece that would still be rural residential ag. So it makes sense to me to just make everything contiguous here on the east side of 47 and allow this to all be developed together so that roads and lot layouts can be integrated there. The other thing is this pocket of industrial that's currently there. Without the commercial to the north, we need to discuss whether that is appropriate and whether you want to keep that 62 acres of industrial, or we could turn that back to rural residential ag or even residential open space. And then lastly, what I've shown with these green areas is under the current proposed zoning district, where requires a 30-acre minimum lot and minimum district size to request a rezoning to ROS. These are the properties that would be applicable, or could request rezoning to ROS from the current RRA designation, meaning that they could have 2-acre lots, potentially. So, what's nice is that everything is east of the creek here. It's all contained, in the southwest area. It abuts up against what are some of our smaller lots in the city, and also against the city of Oak Grove. I think it's really a very reasonable and workable land use plan for 2040. So having said that, I would like to open up discussion on some of these details in this vicinity, and then also back in this area regarding the expansion of commercial industrial in southwest area. So if there aren't any questions, I'm not gonna refrain from going through the actual draft district language right now until we talk a little bit about how the 2040 plan is going to look.
So Liz, on the green parcels there that are conducive to this, are you asking that they have the option to opt in?
Well,
If,
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
well, yeah, if you want, you're talking about is an option there that,
No, I would recommend that they remain RRA, and that those property owners would develop concept plans just like anyone else and bring those forth to the city and make application for a rezoning. And then through review of that concept plan, we would determine, whether they meet the criteria of that ROS district. I mean, if you felt strongly about it, and you wanted to do it, you could rezone those areas to ROS as part of your comp plan update. So those are two options to consider.
and then on the other area there where you're discussing the change from RRA or ROS to RRA or ROS from the industrial.
Right.
How does that fit the overall industrial designation at this point? That would just leave us the filled area back here, and then basically Joe Green's an adjoining area there.
Right. Honestly, this is not the best industrial land anyway. It's wooded, it's kind of hilly. It backs up to the creek here, slopes to the west. So I think, and the way it's been divided up, would be tough. You could, if you rezoned it RRA, those property owners would have to come together if they were ever to request a rezoning to ROS. Either one would be appropriate. In other words, the ROS next to an RRA is certainly compatible. And, but if at the same time you wanted to make this entire area ROS, you certainly could do that as well.
Right? Comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
so if anything, right now, that western industrial spot was put back to RRA, and then that parcel, as well as the current green ones, are benefiting from the updated comp plan, because they're not forced into the 1 in 10, one house per 10 acres anymore, right?
Right, so like the Skolquist parcel, for instance, yes, he was limited under that 1/10 designation. So he would, yeah, if he were RRA, obviously he'd be under the 5-acre average, or ROS, the 2-acre. So he's got a little bit more potential there to split. I know he did appear at one of the last couple meetings and voice his desire to be 2-acre parcels.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rainville.
I agree with the area that's now designated industrial to bring that back to more of a residential. And I would say go with the RRA.
Okay.
So why would we not make that ROS?
It's already divided into smaller lots.
The blue area?
Yeah.
Take a look at
Yeah.
your map here.
You could still make it ROS if the property owners got together and wanted to do it
I'm
together.
just, if we look at the intent, it's like we have a small piece of ROS up there, and then it goes back to a 5-acre zoning, and then goes to, and if I look at the intent of what the ROS, it's like, how could you make the call that the blue or the green doesn't make the same intent as what's already ROS?
Stockman? I guess I look at it as that maybe I'm incorrect, but the green to the bottom of the purple is one property owner.
That is, yes.
Okay. The yellow to above the purple is one property owner.
That's correct.
Okay, so that middle piece, Commissioner Alders, is owned by numerous people. If we put it to RRA, if they all wanted to get together at some point, they could come to the city to say, we'd like to go ROS. But at this point, it's all separate owners. And that to me would be much more difficult to do. Not that it isn't possible, but if they were all to get together at the same day, the same time, same mindset to make that decision, then they could come to the city.
I know, but are we looking for a future development for our city, and is this where we're gonna invest in 2-acre lots, or are we gonna have 5-acre lots? Because we're kind of opening this thing up to 2-acre lots now, so as a city council and a planning and zoning, we've got A through F to determine where it makes sense for ROS. And I think you could argue anybody's lot could make sense to do ROS in now then. So I'm not a huge fan of the 2 acres. I understand why we had to do it, but I also look at, we have one little sliver, and then it goes back to industrial, and it goes to a 5 acres. It's like, do we at least need to be consistent in that one area? Or do we have, because we're gonna get this, the planning and zoning is gonna get I can see a lot of requests to go to this ROS for people that wanna develop land in the future, and we have to have some, why do we do it in one area and not another area?
Mr. Chair?
Madam Stockman.
Mayor. Right, I mean, I see Commissioner Alder's point. If, let's say it's all RRA and they were to come forward with a rezoning, it is highly likely that we would view it favorably because it is contiguous. It is, all contained east of this creek. I mean, sometimes when we are looking at zoning districts, we do look at topographically, the types of features we're dealing with, and what may separate one area from another. That creek is a wonderful buffer or breaking point between ROS and RRA. I don't think one way or the other is necessarily right or wrong. Would it be easier for the property owners? Yes, if you just rezoned it all ROS and left it at that. Because as you can see, these other areas are really, don't have that potential unless they go together with one another to create a 30-acre piece. And it's not gonna happen down here where you have 1-acre lots, so, it is pretty self-contained anyway. So honestly, I don't see a real negative or positive from going one way or another. If it's ROS, they're certainly not forced into subdividing. If they have a 5 or a 10-acre piece up in here, they're welcome to live on it that way as long as they want to.
I like the idea of, Planner Stockman had said that if the property owners wanted to come with a concept plan and propose that, we are obligated on the yellow areas right now, except for those two little pockets that you designated there. We are obligated by our settlement agreement to move forward with that. And, but the rest of it, I think it makes sense to have a concept plan before we commit to it. I agree, putting an industrial pocket in the middle of the residential doesn't make sense. And turn that back to residential.
Mr. Mayor?
Planner Stockman.
The one benefit in doing that and allowing or requiring the property owners to make the application for rezoning is that we do get that extra public hearing and the notices go out for public comment. Obviously, there's a comment period on the comprehensive plan too, but not specific letters sent to surrounding properties. So, either way, we would ask them to generate a concept plan. And we always ensure that, it drives with adjacent properties, future street connections, and those kinds of things. But it is nice to, have that specific input on the project. So if, we're talking 62 acres, that's 30, possibly 30 homes. Maybe 25-ish or whatever, you've got some wetlands in there, streets, steep topography, I don't know, maybe 20 acres, I don't know, or 20 lots rather.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. That purple up there, is that where the Burns Auto, the commercial is that now?
Here?
No.
No,
No, Burns is right here.
Oh, okay, okay.
this is south of 22.
Oh, okay.
This is,
south
we're
of-
talking about this piece.
Yeah, okay. 'Cause I'm
Right.
looking, you got all the roads covered up, so I'm not.
Here's 22.
Oh, that's 22 up there, okay.
Yep.
Okay,
So this was formerly farmed land here.
okay.
So this is Scopeless land, and this is already homes in this area right there.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Perro.
question for Stockman. I just want to be clear that this red dashed line that's on this is the cutoff line between what used to be commercial and now we're talking about doing ROS. Is that what I'm understanding? The red
Right.
dashed line?
Yeah, so this used to be commercial, and then this all here was, either RRA or the diversified rural, which was that limited area of 1 per 10, part of our use of.
And to clarify, that was designated that way as part of the settlement.
So this was,
So
a- this has to be like it is, except for these two little pockets that Mr. Raisler doesn't own. But we agreed to eliminate this commercial and allow the 2 acres in this vicinity So the question is really this side, there's a 15-acre piece here that would stay commercial unless we change it to match ROS. And this 5-acre piece would be RRA unless we change it to match the ROS, which makes sense on this side of 47. So then the question is, and I think we have a consensus that industrial really doesn't make sense here anymore. Based, it's kitty corner from commercial, but it doesn't abut any other business districts. So then we're just, talking about what's best for that 62 acres there. And I believe there's about 5 property owners.
It's like 6 probably.
6? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question to ask Stockman, our planner. Are you saying then that we should look at extending that 2-acre lots over into there, that area there? Because you mentioned something about Skolquist's property, he wanted 2-acre lots.
Yes, that would be one option, would be to include
All of those?
the blue and the 2 green here. Now, you don't have to, this could all go back to RRA, and then those property owners would come forth should they ever want to be rezoned to ROS. And they would be applicable because they are contiguous to what we will designate ROS.
Okay, I got another question. What about other places in the city where we have land that's abutting other cities?
No,
Are we-
nothing,
Are we setting a precedence by doing this, if we extend it out?
no, not the way the current proposed draft ordinance is written. The properties have to be contiguous to this area. They have to be a minimum of 30 acres in size to be applicable for the rezoning. It will not apply to any other, freestanding areas in the city at this point.
In other words, abutting our city, they'd have to go to court, same way we did the last time.
No, it doesn't have to become a legal
But if-
battle.
But if they wanted to do it?
Who wanted to do what?
Well, for instance, down in the corner there, we're looking at over here on 181st and Boss Street.
Oh, okay, if you want me to go back to this one. Down here you're talking about?
Yeah, that's just an example.
Okay, the property owners could request a rezoning down here. You could also, this is why I brought it up. Really, we should address what we want there at this point in time on our land use plan.
Okay, because I'm just saying this, because the precedent's already been set over in that other corner. Even though, that over in Oak Grove, or up in St. Francis area, there were Bowers within last month.
No, there's no precedence, Dale. All annexation requests are individual. Those all are reviewed individually. If somebody wants to be detached and annexed to an adjacent community, that's a separate request. It goes to the state law judge, and those are reviewed separately. The best thing to do is to decide what you want as a city. And if, let's say you want a small pocket of commercial, or some 2-acre residential down here, you can change that now as part of your comp plan. If that's not what you want, and you leave this as RRA, then what has to happen is the property owner needs to come forward and request an amendment to your comprehensive plan before they request the rezoning.
In other words, you're saying it's possible to do that in all edges of our city, if they come with a request.
Well, you could do whatever you want now as part of your comp plan on your 2040 land use plan, anywhere.
We could go 2 acres over the whole city then.
Yeah, if you wanted to, Dale, yes, you could.
No, I'm just saying that because I've heard some people already say, well, why can't we get what everybody else is getting?
Yeah, I'm aware that there are definitely differing opinions, yes.
Okay, I'm just bringing it out as a point.
There are also people that wish to remain rural and like the privacy and the, you know, some of the reasons they moved here. But, don't worry so much about what property owners may do. What you should focus on is what you would like to see. What are your 10-year goals for now then?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rickert.
No, obviously, as the city grows and the costs increase, we do need to plan for some growth. I think you have to. You know, I think this is a perfect opportunity to take a look at this one area where we're somewhat, because of the settlement agreement, you know, we're forced into going to a smaller lot. So do we want to kind of keep that general area and focus on that as our growth point? You know, so in the areas that Liz has marked as green, do we want to designate those as ROS as well? And again, that's the focus area for our growth. Because again, in my opinion, we need growth. Otherwise, if we have no growth, our taxes are going to go up and as expenses go up. And nobody wants that. So how do we translate one to the other? So if we designate one district as that smaller lot size as Rogers Lake is 1 acres, from years past, you know, now this is 2 acres, but it's just in that area, that may be the focal point.
Why wouldn't you just make that purple area ROS, or what do those people want? Is there anybody here that's from that area? Do they want ROS or do they want RRA? Has anybody ever talked to them? Because if it's gonna change, you should change it to what the people want now. Because if they've gotta come back in here later on, it's gonna cost them money to pay you and to deal with all these other people. Why don't they have it right now?
Yep, you certainly could.
Well, and the odds of, because of the lots and houses in there now, the odds of that actually getting developed into the 2 acres is probably somewhat slim. So even though it was zoned ROS, odds are the landscape of that section's not gonna change.
But they would have that opportunity.
Let's go
do
back
it.
to waiting to be called on, because people are listening on the tape and they want to know who's talking. So if you're gonna, if you want to speak, be called on.
Mr. Mayor.
Planner Stockman.
I agree with those 5 or 6 property owners in there. It's not like one, it's not like one person with a 7-acre lot can come in and say, I want 3 lots. They have to go together and prepare a coordinated, street layout with lot divisions that are functional and reasonable. So, yeah, the chances are pretty slim that you're gonna end up with maximum density in there.
So right now, in our commercial areas, if somebody abuts the commercial area and they would like their property designated commercial, if they abut, they can come and request that.
Correct.
And so in the same way, we are obligated in the yellow area by an agreement that that is going to be the 2 acres. But I think that in the green areas, in the purple areas, we go back to the RRA. And if they want to come with a concept plan that shows a coordinated effort, how it's going to tie into the rest of the community, put that responsibility on them to come and petition just like they would if it was abutting the commercial and they wanted to add their RRA to the commercial. Because again, one of the concerns that people have had is this is opening the door to this on a wider scale. And we did make a good faith agreement and we need to go forward on the gold area, on the yellow area. But beyond that, I think that it's incumbent on those, when they want to develop, to come with a plan. And they certainly have that right if they're joining it. Right now, if those areas are being farmed and they're not looking to do that, when that time is right, they certainly can request that. We'll know more what the city's like and whether that's immediately or in years to come. But I think it's beneficial to come with a plan where the others, it's an obligation. We have to do it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rickert.
there's nothing stating that if say Skoquist property, if he came in and he wants to do 5, if we designated that an ROS, he has to do 2 acre lots. You know, and so my thing is, you know, you take the property owner's rights away now where you do it across the street, but now you're forcing him to come in and spend how many thousands of dollars to try to petition to rezone that to ROS? And again, that's why I say, if you look at it now and look at where we as a city want to create a growth pocket, why not do that now? And then that way you're not putting that burden on that landowner. You've established it in this one district or area, and that's what you want to set as your ROS, and that's it. You know, otherwise, again, you're putting that burden upon the landowner to try to come in, spend how many thousands of dollars, and there's no guarantee that you're gonna approve it. I've seen that before in council meetings where planning and zoning approved rezoning over in that area and council rejected it. So now you have landowners spending thousands of dollars and not getting what they want.
Liz?
Me.
Commissioner Perry?
It might be a little redundant, the question, but there's no, let's say, what's the word I'm looking for? Room for a compromise, there we go. No room for compromise on the, and this is off of those two parcels we're talking about, just above that, in the ROS and the yellow that runs along 22. Is there any room for compromise on that to stay in the commercial at all?
Not to my knowledge.
Not for the settlement agreement.
Not at all?
No.
Okay.
I mean, that was a specific request in the settlement, was to.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Raymond.
again, I believe we should keep change the industrial to the RRA. If those residents, decide to do something down the road, they can come to us. And put in a concept plan and we can look at it, or the council at that time, depending when that is. Then maybe it isn't for another 10 years and it comes up again in the comp plan in 10 years and things have changed and it's difficult to go back if you make that change.
So right now, the 2 greens on the south, well, actually, all 3 greens under the current density is 1 in 10. With this change, we'll be going back to the RRA, which will be the 5-acre average.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Ricker?
And the reason that is because we're no longer controlled by the Met Council and dictated that we have to do the 1 in 10.
Correct.
That's the reason.
Yep.
Do you want to take a vote per se on first the blue area and then secondly the green areas? Or do you want to?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan?
question for Planner Stockman, I'm just trying to remember, on the current industrial area on the west side, you said that's 62 acres, but is it pretty wet in the back? I mean,
There are wetlands, there's a lot of trees. The lot lines are sort of awkward. I mean, there's not a big area, you know, it backs up to the creek.
I can't tell from the aerial, are the houses primarily like the front half?
No, they're kind of spread around a little. I think there's one, it's
I'm
hard
just-
to tell.
Okay, I'm just thinking, okay, so if the ROS along Viking in the northwest corner, would theoretically someone be able to move south based on access from there and leaving the houses where they were?
Yeah, I think there may be potential to, yes, connect, future street connection toward the south. I guess we'd have to look a little closer at it. That's, kind of what the concept planning is for, but,
So however it was zoned, they can still get in there, they could theoretically get in there by splitting up their existing parcels.
yeah, they really would all have to coordinate, because none of them have, I don't believe any of them have enough frontage to get, the 300 feet they need on 47, so there's already, I believe, one kind of a flag lot in there. So they really would all have to coordinate, even to do 2.5 acres,
Any other comments?
Mayor,
Commissioner Perro.
I'm gonna just kind of, I guess, follow along with, Rickard's, views on the zoning for the west side of 47 there as well. All the properties that abut on the west side of those properties most likely will not fall into the category of the ROS, just because of the lay of the land. So I feel that it's probably beneficial to the property owners for that, industrial one that's in discussion right now, and the one to the south of it that's green, to be zoned ROS, containing all of the ROS into one area, and all the properties around it are pretty much divided up as they are, and the lay of the land is not gonna allow too much more division. So, I guess I don't see any reason to keep it or change it to RRA and see it come back again in 3 years.
Mayor.
Commissioner Alders.
So if you went forward with that change and you make that purple spot all yellow, could the guy with the middle section tear his house down and subdivide it into 2-acre lots, and everybody around him stays on a 10-acre lot?
No, because he doesn't have 30 acres.
So the whole group would still have to get together to agree that that whole parcel would need to be basically subdivided. You couldn't have one person
Right.
tear down his house and put 3 lots up.
Right. There's a little out in the language of the ordinance that allows the city council to allow a rezoning on a smaller piece, but only if it's necessary for making a connection somehow, whether it be via street or via trail, at some critical point. But no, just out of the blue, we're not gonna allow somebody to kind of jump out of the middle of that 62 acres. And it's, the reason being is you really need to coordinate, change lot lines and, the whole street configuration thing would need to be, looked at as a whole. I mean, if you wish, we can just kind of move on to the next topic. We could bring an aerial photo with a little more detail next time and look at it, but,
Yeah, but if you just gotta get by that one.
um, you know, either way, I guess I
Liz,
really
have you
don't.
talked to anybody in that purple industrial area?
I do not believe, no, that I've ever worked with any of those property owners there.
I think it probably would be good to table this portion of it at this point, figure out what the thought is. I mean, right now, they're aware that they've been locked in one intent. And I don't think anybody there has been, they never approached us with wanting anything else at the point. You know, it's,
Right.
because most of them have, well, just almost all of them have 10.
Why don't we just send them a letter and we can ask them, invite them either to the next meeting or just
Yeah, get some feedback from them.
get some feedback that way.
And then, Mr. Skolquist has made his wishes known.
Yep, we know he's in favor of the 2 acres.
And we don't know up on, is that Joe Green's property up top?
That's Joe Green right there. Mhm.
And that other green one down there, is he
Do
weighed
we know
in?
who this is?
He's planning on farming for several years, yes.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
so we'll get some more information and discuss that further.
Okay, so how about we tackle the commercial industrial expansion of the industrial park area there?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Bryan.
Planner Stockman, if you could just, I'm trying to remember, was there a fixed amount of residents who were for or against?
Well, the Muellers own this big chunk immediately adjacent, and they were against, although, you know, we did explain to her when she was in here that they could continue farming and using it agriculturally as long as they wanted to. And then Mr. McCray's property is for sale. He has the 15 acres along 22. He actually requested that it be commercial, and he wanted it commercial before he put it on the market, but timing-wise, of course, that wasn't possible. I have had some actual calls with people interested in it residentially and splitting it into 3 pieces. And then the property north of his is farmed. I'm not sure of Moritz or anybody down in this vicinity.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
To Ms. Stockman, I remember one of the property owners on the south side of 22 would be this, I believe she's the second in from the west.
Oh, yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're right. Mhm.
But I think when, in talking to her, for her reasoning for doing it, I believe that she would have been able to do what she wanted to do with an existing zoning on a residential lot. So as far as the type of business she wanted.
Oh,
But I don't know if she's taken any additional steps.
I see.
That was the only one I remember being in favor of any change.
Mhm.
On the 15 acres north of, or, so McCray's 15 acres there.
Mhm.
Is that a separate parcel above that?
Yes, there's 2 separate parcels above it. So this one's like a full 40 and this one's a partial, like 35-ish, maybe, 30, 35. You know, we do have this residential neighborhood here along Tiger. And remember that any commercial has to have that 100-foot buffer when it abuts residential, so that is some protection there if we choose to go with this plan as shown.
So on the east side of that, south of Viking, is 220s.
South of Viking, oh, here,
East of the existing commercial.
Other side.
oh, here, no, this is a 40,
No,
Oh,
the other side,
side.
east.
East.
oh, east, I'm
Right.
sorry, yes, 220s there.
Well, we did have some requests back when we were talking about this years ago, the one you were talking about. And then west of there, all the way down to Rick Lustico's place. I think there was interest in commercial, so it just needed to be contiguous. I think that the area, if the people that are buying McCrae's want to go residential, that's going to landlock. If Mueller's don't concede any land, even if we zoned it commercial, that's going to landlock that because you got residential on the one side and Mahutkas have already said they didn't want to come in through their farmed area on the north there, so,
Do Muellers own all three of those properties?
yeah.
Mhm.
One concession might be along the county road down to the south, where they might concede some land, but if people buying McCrae's aren't going commercial anyway, it's not gonna gain anything, so. But their house is in the middle of that.
Yeah, the house is right in the middle of the 15.
Well, I think we can probably pick it up on the south side, I think there's enough interest there.
And leave everything to the north the way it is?
I think we're kinda stuck that way right now. Yeah,
Well,
Mr. McCrae, once he realized when the county came through and was paying a different price for commercial and residential, wished he would have gone commercial, but it was a lot more valuable when they took his frontage when they widened 22 there. But, no, we can designate it, the people that are buying the land can decide what to do with it.
Mr. Mayor.
Planner Stockman?
Yeah, that's what I would recommend, I guess. I'd like to see you do it consistently along the north and south. You know, a lot of things can change in 2 years, much less 5 or 10. So, I mean, if that is your vision, then I would just move forward that way.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan?
to clarify, we would be just looking at the parcels on the west, to the west and south of the existing commercial area?
So everything you see in red here is what, well, I think what was said is everything on the south, we could do everything on the south, and then I recommended that we just do it all together. We could take out this 40 on the north, but, I mean, it's a budding industrial anyway.
Mayor,
Commissioner Moan?
how does this work out with the industrial we are taking out from the ROS?
Well, so we would have to designate what is blue and what is red. So, yeah, we're basically, we could certainly, yeah, replace some of that industrial over here, which would make sense. This has been the focus here, this is where we have our at capacity. So we could leave some land along 22 as commercial, and then have the areas behind it industrial. We would have to do, you know, a little, kind of an enlarged land use plan. And we could show too how that, you know, the project you just approved for the storage facility is right on the border here of our industrial district. And then, you know, with that, we talked about extending streets, through to the west. And, you know, our transportation plan has already shown that there's gonna be a full intersection, further west here. It's actually right on the edge of McCrae's piece. So there'd be a full intersection here, and if 22 were ever to become divided, then Iguana would be a right in, right out. So it's to everyone's benefit to try to push a street through at some point, where the county, you know, is gonna allow a full intersection.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
to Commissioner Moen, I'm trying to think in my mind what you said. So we're looking at possibly taking out the industrial over on the east side. But we are not obligated, I don't believe we are obligated to replace that anywhere. It's not like it was industrial buildings on there or anything like that. It's all residential right now. I mean, we are not obligated to replace
No, not
that.
at all. In fact, in the last comp plan, we had surmised that we had, you know, definitely an excess of commercial industrial. And I mean, that still holds true given the amount of land that's vacant. So, yeah, I don't think there's any, we don't necessarily have to replace it, correct?
And the potential for that being industrial with the 5 or 6 homes on it was not imminent. It wasn't like some vacant lots that, you know, the parcels we had back here where there was nothing else going to be done with them unless they put industrial on it. So.
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rickert.
But I think what we're saying is we lost, 120 some acres in the settlement, not just that little sections we've been talking about tonight. So that's a fairly good size. Plus, recently, we lost all the property south of town along 5 that was once zoned commercial too.
So,
You know, and, you know, business helps subsidize our taxes. So it'd be nice to have some areas where we are planning for some growth in that aspect as well. And
Yeah,
again, if we've removed all that because of the settlement agreement, we've removed what we have south of 5, we hardly have anything left.
Well, we have, it was commercial. The industrial we're talking about is,
Well, I'm talking both,
Yeah.
either or.
yeah, and that's why we're looking here, where we want to expand the commercial in a more concentrated area here.
Mayor, I think,
Commissioner Ball.
to clarify, yeah, that answers my question as well as an additional question in that when we're talking about expanding and the options that we have, how do we put some of it back and how much of it are we going to expand because we've lost it in different areas, as well as what we would be required, if at all, to expand in. I mean, there's a lot of shading going on here and a lot of stuff removed that you don't see in different areas, so. And maybe helpful for people who are here too, knowing that there was a lot of other areas removed. So we're not just talking about expanding areas, we're talking about putting some of that back as well, so.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rickert.
Ms. Stockman, how much on 5 there, how many acres did we lose there when we rezoned that? 'Cause that was quite a,
so we lost 40 acres of commercial and 40 acres of industrial on Eng's piece. 124 acres in the settlement area and of commercial, and 62 acres of industrial if we change that blue piece back to residential. But having said that, I did do a calculation of what we still have there. Just have to find it. So at 47 and 22, we still have, let's see, 42, 47, 70, 82, 82 plus 26, so over 100 acres of commercial still at that corner. And another 100 acres of industrial with Green's property and the land to the north. So that's still a pretty sizable area. But we did cut, you know, the commercial about in half.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Ricker.
Yeah, but I guess all I'm saying is if you look at what we lost in the settlement, what we've changed down on the Ing property and a couple other, overall in the last 5 years, we've lost a considerable amount of acreage. So I guess in my opinion, you gotta kind of take a look. You don't have to obviously replace it for acre, you can't, but if our industrial park is at capacity, how can we expand that? Because again, in my opinion, those businesses bring in dollars to the community. You know, have we ever thought, or has anybody asked the property to the north of the industrial park now, going north?
Same owners.
Well, I know, but
Mr. Mayor?
Planner Stockman?
Yeah, we did briefly discuss the land on 201st as part of our initial talk, and then kind of just narrowed it down to what you see on this map. But I agree, I mean, a lot of the calls I get are startup businesses looking for reasonable lots, and, you know, we have less extensive material requirements than some of the suburbs, and we really have, you know, people that want outdoor storage, and it just works. It's been good. So I do think we have to capitalize on that.
If, you're saying we changed 124 acres from commercial to residential in the settlement area.
Right.
In this proposal here, south of, and 40 acres on the Ing property. So 164.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The proposal, or the concept in front of us, just south of 22, from the east to the west, would be about 160 acres. It looks like a little corner cut out of that one piece, but 150 plus acres additional there, without taking into account anything on the north side. So if there's something on the north side, then that would be an expansion over what we've conceded. Now, separate from that is an industrial that probably wasn't gonna develop into industrial because it's filled with homes right now.
Right.
And the industrial that was designated on the Ings property, they can barely hay that. So it would have been taking an awful lot to actually put industrial buildings back there, because it's really, really
Really
wet.
wet, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
You know, even if we did take and change all of the orange there to commercial, that's not saying, that any of that will ever be commercial.
correct.
I mean, so we can't assume that because we would possibly change those, that's gonna bring anything to us, as far as, additional businesses. Because if the residents, and those residents, other than I think one, said they wanna continue farming, or they want to continue just having their acreage. So even by putting them in there, doesn't guarantee us 15 or 20 new businesses coming in at any time. So one doesn't mean the other, one doesn't, changing zoning
That
doesn't.
doesn't automatically mean
No.
that,
And-
yeah, that is one of the problems with all the areas that have been designated commercial and industrial. Getting the buyers and the sellers on the same page at the same time, or even having the property owners interested in selling it all, has been out of our control.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rainville.
Also, too, I think that we'd need to look very closely at what revenues, what additional revenues do businesses bring in to the city? And it's their tax dollars. Hopefully it's employment, so there would be people employed. The city doesn't benefit from anybody's payroll check. But some businesses are, can be a burden on city infrastructure, the trucks in and out, if the streets, we have to maintain our streets. If the streets that they're going in on hopefully would survive. Some of our streets right now would be hard pressed to have a lot of commercial truckage on it. But having a commercial business isn't an automatic, you have more money in the bank. Their tax value is different, they are taxed at a higher rate, but again, probably 80 to 85% of everybody's taxes, when you look at your bottom line, maybe 15 to 20% of that comes to the city. We're not getting all those dollars. And so you have to look at the type of businesses that would come in, and could they not be more of a burden than a benefit to us?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Ricker.
you gotta look at it, it is a lot more than residential. Otherwise, why are all these communities around? You look at Ramsey, how many years ago, they were giving lots away, giving tax incentives to businesses to move there. There's a reason for that. They're not gonna do it for no reason. Because they do bring in a lot of tax revenue to the city.
Mr. Mayor, south of 22, are all of those areas in orange? Have those owners been contacted, and which ones do and wouldn't do the commercial?
Leonard Stockman?
We sent letters to all those property owners, when we had our meeting, I believe in September. And only a handful came, so we still, we could try that again and send another letter, or,
To my knowledge, only one said they'd rather not.
yeah, I remember just one being opposed, at least on the north side.
I'm sorry, two. One in the north and one in the south.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I guess I agree with you, it's Mueller's, I think I'm pretty sure I know what their opinion would be.
They were present at the meeting and they spoke up.
Right, so that big chunk there isn't gonna change whether we designate it or not. And if you keep it south of 22, at least you have the infrastructure in place from a road standpoint. If you go on 201, that's one of the roads that is not in great shape, that may or may not handle a bunch of industrial traffic.
Ironically, that's a county road.
Yeah. So you.
And that would be one of those that they would turn back to us when we hit 5,000 population. That would be a road that they would turn back. Any road that is a county road that's within the confines of the city, those are the ones they want to turn back.
That should happen soon.
Yeah. So I just look at it, if you say south of 22, your infrastructure is already there. You don't have to develop more through spurs, through some of this, through the lots to even get access to them. Because you burden the person that's gonna try to build an arid area to come up with a road plan through it as well. And we're talking of a 5 to 7 year plan.
And if Mueller's, even if we designate it, and they're not willing to sell any of that land, anybody who tries to develop around that is going to be blocked by that. I mean,
Probably,
let's take
They own
the
this whole chunk.
path of least resistance.
probably the same is true on the south too, pretty much,
More?
even though it's different owners. I don't think any of that'll sell.
Mr. Mayor?
Leonard Stockman?
Let's focus on going with what your vision is, because, like I said, property owners situations can change, the years go by, things change, whatever.
Well, I also think that offers people make, if the city says, this is where we want to develop and this is gonna be our commercial hub, I think that maybe takes some of those property owners and says, okay, since you've designated that, a buyer can come in and say, now I know what the city's designation is, and I can make a reasonable offer, that then the property owner says, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Right, and
Can't
if,
guarantee anything, but I think you're gonna hold back on development of those, if that's a specific area, they're not gonna have any interested buyers, because they don't know what the city designation is.
Mr. Mayor,
Planner Stockman.
so it's critical to know too, and to plan your transportation, you know, we base all of our population and estimates and everything, land use estimates on what this map says. And if we're showing, additional land to the west of the industrial park as expansion area, that also allows us, you know, if somebody, you know, for instance, Josh Peterson, we talked about how the north part of, Hollenbeck's can't develop until he figures out a street connection. So, you know, in that scenario, we would say, you know, the intent here is to expand to the west, this is why we need a street. So it all kind of plays off of each other. So you know, don't go by just because because you don't think they're gonna sell it. Go with what you wanna see there long term. And, I mean, look how long the lots in the industrial park were vacant, and, you know, now all of a sudden we're all full up, so it just,
Well, the other thing to take into consideration is you look at these big blocks, you go, oh, there's a 40 for sale. Take a look at the 40s up in the industrial. What average size do we have up here? for
the lot
industrial lots?
sizes out here, are about 2 acres. No, and those are small. Those are really too small for some people. There are several people that have 2 or 3 or 4, you know.
I'm saying that we've got a lot of development in, you know, in that, what was the total industrial park? Was it even 80 acres?
Yeah, it was about 80.
I mean, it doesn't look like much when you're looking at these 40s here, but depending on how it develops. And if you're talking along the frontage, commercial, you're talking retail, they're probably not gonna take an acre. You know,
Yeah, we just have more demand right now for industry.
well, depending on how you break that up. And the concept has always been if it's valuable enough, people will pay for it. People are willing to sell when the offer's right. And we've had some of that here on 5 where people wanted to expand their homes because there's not an offer right now commercially to appeal to them, so they're just gonna keep living there.
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rickard.
Well, then, to bring that up to an extent, then you got the property in the lower southwest corner where we do have a landowner who has come in and wanted to rezone that to commercial. So you look at any of that?
It's on the map to discuss.
That's why I brought it up.
Mayor,
Commissioner Moan.
to add on to exactly what he's saying, at what point do you look at it and say, okay, people own these properties that we're talking about running to commercial, they don't want to sell and or in the near future plan on, you know, giving them up commercially, so then where do you go? I mean, if you have people coming in, and where do you put them?
Mr. Mayor?
Planner Stockman.
Yeah, it's worthy to note again too that the traffic counts along 181st and Baugh there are the highest of anywhere in Nowman. You know, despite what some people in the neighborhood adjacent may, you know, think that And I see some of their reasoning for not wanting commercial, but if we do it the right way, it's planned the right way, designed the right way, there are ways to create somewhat of a transition, even with residential, development to, as a, transition between those 5-acre lots and the commercial area. But you've already got the landscape business there. You've got a lot of truck traffic on 181st going up Baugh,
And you have the power lines there too, right?
and the power lines, right?
The cop right here.
Mayor?
Commissioner Carroll.
Going back to the area on 22 quickly, I feel that we need to look into rezoning the areas north and south of 22, at least some of it for industrial. Our industrial park is pretty much at capacity, and we haven't really broke too much ground over by the 47 area. There's not a whole lot of desire, plus I don't think any of that's really up for sale at this point, or hasn't found the right dollar amount. But it would be nice to see some more industrial to the west of what's currently there. Yes, I know there's the landowner there to the west of what's currently in blue. That first parcel on the north side of 22, they're not in favor for it, but I think that would be the next branch, that industrial would be a great spot to place an additional industrial zoning. And then the south side of 22 to do the zoning of commercial. I think I know we have to just look into our future and what we want to see as the city and how it lays out for our traffic. And it's up to the property owners from there if they ever want to do anything with it. But that's what I think we should definitely look into, the south side of 22 for commercial and some on the top, the north side of 22 for industrial.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
to look to expand commercial, could we not look to go north of the blue or the purple on the west or the east side? We know that, and I don't know that, those properties
Up here, Mary? Or over here?
over there, yeah, on the east side. I don't know those properties there, I don't know, on the top of my head, I can't tell you what's on them. We know that unless something major happens, those properties to the west of the west side commercial are gonna be farmed, and gonna be farmed for a long time. So I don't know if on the 47, if those lots above that industrial area are a better fit for expansion. I don't know.
But what about straight left of your cursor? What about that big parcel, to your,
Oh, here?
there?
I just spoke to those folks, I think. I think there's just a single home right there.
We didn't ask about that when we sent out the questionnaires. We went up and down 22, but we didn't, and obviously 47's a heavily traveled area as well.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rickert.
Well, the question that we need to ask ourselves, though, too, if you look at the industrial areas that we have, why is that section over there not being developed? Why is that? I can't answer that myself, but there's gotta be something there. The land's set there and ready. you know, and could be. So is it more attractive to business to be in that central area?
Well, I think one thing is, if you look at, even if we expanded everything we've got here, we've got the cemetery on the north side here, that locks us in. If we expand to this 160 plus that which is above, so another 40, 80, 120. So if we expand it here, we pretty much max that out. And up here, you've got some of the few areas where you've still got big parcels along a major road that is also considered. I'm not saying eliminate this, but if we're looking at it at our 2040 plan, should we be talking to these landowners up here as well, saying, you've got an industrial area here and across the road. I don't know back when the township did this originally, why we ended on the east side of 47, didn't go on the west side. But it does seem like once you get past the housing developments here, there are some big parcels there that, if we're looking, this will, whether it sells or not, will fill up as commercial designation fairly quickly, and we will still need some more. And when you've got all the houses that are around here, it's gonna limit it. And we're pretty much up against it here on 22, if we take all of this orange right now. This would be the time to talk about that as well, up there.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Rainville.
as you said, why the town board chose that piece there, if it's just because there was a bit additional, already businesses along there from years back, I don't know, and why hasn't it done anything? It could be as easy as the landowners don't wanna do anything with their land, they wanna keep it, I don't know. I don't know what's on that property right now, if it's farmed, to me, I think it's farmed, if I, going north of 22 on the right, I think that's farm in there. I mean, it's like where the cremation service used to be back in there,
Cremation's the last one at the top of the blue there.
at the top blue, so,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor?
everything north there is.
Planner Stockman.
yeah.
I know part of the thinking was because of the, 10 years ago, we were told there might be an interceptor extended, we may have, we have to reserve land for urban services, and, there's only so much industry that you can do, we're not ever gonna get giant industries without sewer and water. So some of that intent was preserving land for long term.
Well, that area, when you go back to the diversified rural on the 2009 comprehensive plan, go back a couple of pages there, to the first page in your packet here. That was in the Musa area there on the west side of 47 at that point, and north of there, all the way up to Morton Farm area. So, I don't know what those residents have been thinking if they were locked under the 1 in 10s. But it would be worthwhile to have the discussion on the north end of that industrial, both on the west side of 47 and the north side of 47 above the blue, to see what the residents, the property owners there, what interest they have on a major artery as well to expand. Because even if we do everything in the orange color, peach color down here, that we're gonna run out fairly quickly, especially if it doesn't sell. There's a good chunk of it that probably won't in the immediate future, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
question for Planner Stockman. In your opinion, do you see a preference of one or the other as far as staying in downtown or going over on the east side, or looking at somewhere else as far as businesses go?
Well, I think part of it is you've got, I did have people say, well, if there aren't lots in the business park here, then what about, this land on 47? And I multiple times had given out, a couple property owners' names, of course, whom I asked if that was okay. And part of it is, you know, they're big chunks, so the property owner would have to proceed through the subdivision process. Maybe not wanting even to put forth that much effort sometimes, you know. So aside from buying the whole chunk, or, you know, co-signing an application with the landowner to subdivide it, I guess. It never really has gone anywhere.
So then we would still have that issue even if we add in these, even if we add commercial west of our existing commercial up here, we'd still run into that because we have big chunks.
Yeah, there's really only one landowner over there that, you know, has been actively pursuing and talking to people regarding selling land. I just think the types of, I guess, I don't know if she was, you know, not liking what types of development were proposed or what, but, so I don't know.
Where was this, Liz?
Along 47 up
Oh,
to the north,
yeah, that,
you know, kind of.
that property owner's talked to a lot of people.
Yeah, you know, and the tower area there kind of complicates things too. Because you've got special building requirements, because if that baby falls over,
Well, technically, you can't build within the fall range of the tower. So in any direction, if the tower, they have to keep that acreage open. Depending on which way the tower wants to fall, it has to fall within its own property.
okay,
So that's landlocked as long as that tower's there, my understanding.
and then I think there's land in front of it though.
Yes, there's land in front of it that would be available.
Mayor,
Commissioner Apparel.
from a resident standpoint and from traveling roads, I can understand why people had wanted County Road 22 versus 47. Because 47 doesn't have as nice of a turnoff situation. The ditches are steep, the road itself is quite narrow. 22 now has been updated quite a bit and allows for a lot of that ease of travel for businesses to utilize in the future. 47 needs updating, and I don't know that when or how it's ever gonna be done, just because we've got a lot of houses and structures that are close to the road already. So I can understand why businesses want to be more on 22 than 47. Makes a lot of sense.
Well, there's opportunities on 22 that aren't going either, so.
Mr. Mayor?
I don't know if the land's not for sale, the transmission shop was purchased as a private residence, and they don't appear to have any interest in doing commercial there, so. Councilmember Rickard.
We kind of got off the topic of that lower southwest corner too, but again, you know, big point there is we do have a landowner who has, you know, requested a look at rezoning, so I think it definitely is something we really should look at. Because we keep speculating about where we want to change and what we want to change, but we have no idea what a landowner wants to do or may not want to do. Here we have a different situation where we have a landowner who has expressed what they want to do, so do we want to accommodate them or move, you know, in that direction?
Mayor,
Commissioner Darrow.
I don't know exactly what month it was that they came in. I know that they did come to the council, and I know that everybody did discuss it quite thoroughly at the time. And there was a lot of residents that had a heated debate on it. And I don't know that up and changing it now would be the thing to do, but there's a lot of housing down there already with the school. It may be the highest trafficked corner, but it also does, you know, like I said, it's schools. Schools are very trafficked, very highly trafficked, so it's a debate. The
Mayor,
residents had already spoke.
I mean, that's exactly what we've been
Commissioner
talking
Moe.
about, is what residents have been saying, so. I mean, if we keep doing what all the residents want, we will have no commercial anywhere. So I drive 181st every day. I don't live on that corner, but I'll be the first person to say it. I don't think it's a bad place for a commercial at all.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Ricker.
That is power lines go there.
Yeah, I guess the key there in that particular spot are two things. There's already a business across the intersection. And then the power lines are running through that property. What else what can that property be used for? I don't think a lot of people are gonna wanna buy homes, with the power line running over their heads. So and if we're gonna designate that property to be used in some fashion other than, just agricultural, why not commercial? Because again, we have a landowner who's already expressed that wish, and then also because of the power lines, you're not gonna be able to do that residential right through there.
Other comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm in agreement.
Commissioner Ames.
We got that over in the corner there. I'm in agreement that, as I look at it, I think it would be one of the finest uses of our city to have what our landowner came in and asked for there in that corner. I know the residents don't like it. I know nobody likes anything it's gonna be right next to them. That's normal, that's gonna happen. But as I've seen this city grow over the years, I've been around here longer than all of you people, and I can see that there's need over in that corner because of the traffic that goes through there. You already have a business across the road, and someday he's gonna sell that. And if he sells that, he's gonna apply for commercial in Ramsey. Right now, he's not ready to sell because he's the age where he still wants to continue his business. But that area would be I know it's gonna be a good area for a commercial or residential in the future. We're gonna see it over, whether it's in Nowden, whether it's in Ramsey. It's gonna come. And I think that's an area where we could, it'd be a plus and advantage to our city to allow that over in that area there. Yes, if I live there, no, I wouldn't want it, but it's not what I want, what I think is best for the city.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Ricker.
just for the record, I have had residents say they wouldn't mind it either. So I've heard both ways.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
question for Planner Stockman. I'm trying to remember, there were the power lines there, but there's already several parcels that have conditional use permits that are running businesses
The
down
10
there?
acres on the corner of 181st was the parcel that they wanted to have the convenience store, and then the next 10 acres to the west is the one where they operate the landscape business. And then, in that same family
There's that sod barn.
is the parcel that abuts Elk River, and he too was in favor of commercial, even though he's got a residence there. There are a significant number of wetlands in there, but, behind and, kind of under some of that power line area. But, again, with any commercial development that abuts residential, we've got the 100-foot buffer requirement. And, certainly can comment on, have input on how that site lays out, if it ever, if it is commercial.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
to Ms. Stockman, you typed the 100-foot buffer. So does that is bow included in that 100-foot, or is it 100 feet from the west edge of bow?
I believe it reads that it has to be either, planted trees, berms, or ponding. Could be a, you know, a stormwater pond, or I think partly maybe the ditch would, but probably not the road itself.
Okay, so you're talking 100 feet from the edge of the shoulder on Ball, on the west side of Ball.
Can you get that for us specifically? And that's gonna be a big question, if it's from the property line across the road, from the edge of the property on the west side of the road.
Yeah, if I log out of here for a minute, I can.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
And does that also come into play for, if you took those 3 properties on the bottom, are you looking 100 feet on all 4 sides of it? Because those are residential properties.
But they would be zoned commercial, not north of us.
Well, yeah, if the adjacent zone commercial, I guess.
But we're only
Right,
look-
I think it reads, well, let's find it. I mean, I think it reads that it's either being residentially used or it's residentially zoned. So basically, it does kind of side with the residential so that you're insured to have, you know, that buffer.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember
I
Rainville.
mean, as I look at this, it's all commercial, right, or excuse me, it's all residential right now. We're looking at a potential rezone of the south end of those properties, but you still have commercial, or excuse me, you still have residential on all 4 sides of that. Some of that residential is in Ramsey and some is Elk River, but they're still residential.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so are we doing 100-foot buffer 100 feet on all 4 sides?
Yeah, I would say that applies. I mean, just because it's another city, I would respect that.
That,
Councilmember Rickard.
that corner though isn't residential. It's the business, the nursery is on the corner, so that's not residential.
So straight
So
south,
straight south, on 181st and Baugh
I-
is
Is that a
commercial.
home occupation or is that?
Yeah, that I don't know. I mean, there's homes along there, so I don't.
Yeah, that
And that would be
little corner.
something that,
I did,
I would like to know that if this were to move forward, I want to know of the 4 sides, which ones that 100-foot buffer is relevant for.
right, and I remember talking to the planner in Ramsey, when that request came forward, and I do believe it is being run as kind of a home occupation now, but it is getting so large that they were talking about what to do about it, yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, how many acres is that piece? In that,
The entire piece?
that corner?
Well, it's 160, 3 owners.
This is 160 down here?
In orange, you're talking 40. I'm sorry, 30. 10 to 20, no, 40. 40. So 10, the 10, and the 20. And right now, the 20 on the west is one owner with a residence. The 10 in the middle is a business, a landscape business with a residence. And there's farmed on the first 10 on the corner there. And then that first 10 on the corner goes along with the acreage above it, which is all currently farmed underneath the power lines.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm Stockman.
Okay, so I found it. It says a minimum of 100 feet of buffer yard is required along property lines which separate commercial or industrial and residential uses, which may consist of either natural wetland, woods, open space, man-made ponding, or a combination thereof. And then it talks about the different types of screening, and it goes on to say that where did I just see it? It may, the heck? Oh, there. All required screening or buffering shall be located on the lot occupied by the use, building, facility, or structure No screening or buffering shall be located on any public right-of-way. So I definitely think it has to be on the site of the commercial use. Especially if the homes are there first, the commercial use should have the burden of creating that buffer. I mean, it could be a wall, it could be a hedge, it could be ponding, berms, trees. I mean, I think the intent is set back not only for sound, but to allow that landscaping.
All right, we're pushing 9 o'clock. Direction for Planner Stockman. Right now, we want to contact or have the city send out postcards again, however you contacted the property owners in the areas discussed tonight, to also include north on 47, west of 47, and north of the current industrial area. And contact the people, the property owners in the industrial area on 47.
Right.
Are there other clarifications? We've got the setback down in the southwest corner defined.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Rainville.
I would like to also ask, in regards to that southwest corner, is what is the zoning on the Ramsey side there? And the Elk River, so that we know
Okay.
too.
Sure.
Do you have any other action items that you recorded there, Liz?
I guess I would like to bring some, aerial photos next time. We can talk about some of the details. Well, not only down on 181st possibly, but along 22, so we can make an educated land use plan regarding what's industrial and what's commercial.
Mr. Mayor, do we have clarity on what we're doing around the current industrial and residential? Are we staying south of 22? Was one proposal, knowing that some of the land north of 22 isn't a viable option for near-term.
Well, the question for us to decide on the 2040 plan is, do we want to include that even if we think it's not viable at this point? Because right now, if we only conclude it viable, much of what we have, obviously, in the past 10, 15 years, has been designated but hasn't sold for deep interest. As Planner Stockman said, even in industrial areas over on 47 right now, she continues to feed leads to property owners, for whatever reason, aren't interested in selling it. We've had some interest down here in areas that's already designated commercial in downtown here that the property owners have not been interested in. And so I think that that's part of what we have to discuss is what helps people move off that dime. And I think that by sharpening our focus in the downtown area, having the discussion on the southwest corner and on this northeast area, we can focus that, and then maybe the property owners can see where the development is likely to be, and the potential business can see the commitment we have. I don't know if some of this area along 22 here to the south hasn't sold because they don't know what else is coming in west of it. Right now, most of it is residences. If you take a look at this, this whole corner in here, the better part of the 40 that's right on the southwest corner of 5 and 22, people are living there. Or it's a business, or somebody bought a business and turned it into a house. The 40 that's being farmed
if there's been offers, they haven't taken. So there's no guarantee, but we can at least designate it and say, if you're a Benton person, Mueller's probably aren't gonna sell out for industrial for any foreseeable future. So,
Right, so I look at that from a council standpoint, from a planning and zoning. If it's a two-pronged goal to expand that zone to say, here's where we potentially want growth, and also try to be mindful of, as our expenses keep going, we need to have some viable options for actual businesses to come in that people will sell and that they can get access to. South of 22 has the infrastructure to support businesses. North of 22 does not, because you'll have to put roads in there to develop that, even if Mueller's decide to sell. And if we go down by the power lines, people have already approached the council to develop that, and we've told them no, but we're also sitting here thinking that may make sense because it's power lines, and from a residence, that may or may not be the best place for residents, but that may bring some revenue in, and the infrastructure already supports that. So I'm just looking at how many people do we want to try to convince that we should convert their land versus what can the city actually support from an infrastructure standpoint, and where are people going to likely want to build from a business standpoint, and not put some area zoned resident or commercial that they're never going to sell, and even if they do decide to sell it, there's no infrastructure plans in place to support that.
Well, and Mayor,
Commissioner Moore.
to add to that, even if we were not to say, this is Mueller's property, right? That Mueller's property would be rezoned, if somebody purchased it at a later date, could they not come in and rezone it because it's
They could.
adjacent to it?
They could-
So
they
why
could
not
petition it.
do where we know where we can go and let that play itself out potentially,
It's the same argument they had with the ROA, right?
right?
You could petition it
Right.
anytime you wanted to.
Right.
I'm just looking at it going, they are not gonna sell, you know them. And even if they do decide it, there's no infrastructures to support putting a bunch of land in there without us running a road through there.
And don't let anybody misinterpret it, they're wonderful people.
They're great.
They have
I still
had
don't know.
farms in their family for, I don't know if they're a Century Farm or not, but they run the last dairy farm in Milford County.
Mr.
They don't
Mayor,
own that.
Out of Stockton.
just to clarify, there will be infrastructure needed on the south side of 22 and the north side of 22. There will be local streets needed. The county will not allow, in an area like that where where there are options for local streets, they will not allow direct lot access. So, I mean, don't base it on that alone. I mean, I definitely think you had some valid points. But again, you need to go with your vision, and long-term goals.
I
Mr.
mean,
Mayor?
the part on the north is, the southern part of that northern section is pretty wet.
Yeah.
Infrastructure will be a lot more difficult there because, as we saw with the storage discussion last month here, it's all wet there.
Right, right.
Councilmember Rainville.
And I just want to clarify something. Commissioner Alders, you said that that corner in the southwest corner, that the council said no to them?
Well, Kelly was right. I mean, earlier this summer, we had a proposal to put a convenience store or something. And there was a pretty large hearing, and I'm pretty sure it was voted down at that point, right?
And, Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
If my memory is correct, the petitioner pulled the petition. The council did not vote on it. Am I correct on that?
I do not know.
I believe
So
we
do-
voted on it, and I think you're right that they pulled it before it came to the council.
Ms. Stockman, is
I
that correct?
believe that's right, but there was also talk about waiting to discuss it as part of this comp plan update.
Right. So I just want, we didn't vote anything down. It was,
Okay.
We're on video, remember?
Can we say it wasn't looking favorable?
I don't, to the mayor, to Councilmember Rickard, I don't know why he pulled it. I just wanted the record clear that
Mayor,
Mr. Mayor.
We could ask one of the applicants, he's sitting right here, he might know if he pulled it or if it was.
Mr. Mayor, I think we've already got that clarified. So.
Yeah, I don't recall. So, I understand, I don't recall, so. Mr. Raisler.
Mr. Mayor, I can actually clarify that. It was never pulled by us. It was actually denied by the council. We did pull some of the land out. We withdrew some of the land, but we still had the 10 acres, and that wasn't denied.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I stand corrected.
All right, so Planner Stockman has some research to do to get back to us. We'll have another discussion on this. I want to reiterate that all discussions will be held in public. They will be noticed. They will either be joint sessions or workshops or open houses. So they will all be open to the public in person. As long as our video keeps working, and I think we got the bugs worked out now, they will be on YouTube. So further discussions will be had in public. Nothing set in stone here. We are doing more research. And we'll have more discussions, and we'll have a comp plan updated one of these months. Because there are other things too, that obviously the land use is the key component, but there's multiple sections of the comp plan that we have to determine if there's any changes, any updates, and get that submitted for approval. This portion of it regarding the settlement area, we have a specific deadline on, and we need to make sure we are cognizant of that and make sure we meet that well ahead of time.
Right, I'd like to keep it moving along, as far as, I don't think December is necessarily a good month for another meeting, but, for sure in January. I don't know if we wanna talk some optional dates or not. 'Cause I know, well, at this point, I don't know of anything that would be on the planning and zoning in January. But I
Let's
could,
pencil that one in at this point then.
I mean, I could be ready to do it earlier in the month as well, or even 2 meetings in January. We gotta keep it moving, because I can't do anything else on the comp plan until I have a land use plan to go by.
So right now it'd be the 22nd,
All right,
January.
22nd of January.
And if you pull things together, we need a meeting prior to that. We have a council meeting on the 8th. We need to pull something together before that. We can publicly post it. And for right now, we'll put it on the 22nd.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Rainville.
if there's no additional business, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second, meeting adjourned. Mr. Raisler.
Mr. Mayor, is there any time that any of the public can address you on a couple of these issues that we discussed this evening? There was a sign-up sheet in the rear, and I did sign up on it. I'm really understanding that we could have time to
Yeah, this was the sign-up sheet. Nobody had signed up on that. That was the,
it is in the back here.
There's
Well,
two
that-
different forms.
that's just the sign-up to, not to speak, that's just to say people were here. This is the public forum.
Oh, this is a 4-item sign-up sheet?
Yeah, this was back there before you came in, apparently.
Oh,
And so this was pulled at the beginning of the meeting when that came up on the agenda, and nobody had signed up yet. So we leave that, the public forum is the first part of the meeting. So that was the sign-up sheet for that, so we apologize if you didn't get a chance on that, but.